Welcome to all of you on the second day of Tata Literature Live 2020, the 11th annual Mumbai International Literature Fest and the first one to go completely digital. Thanks to our title sponsor Tata and co-sponsored by Tata Steel and Tata Projects. I'd like to remind our viewers before we begin that we will be taking questions, so type in your questions in the comment section. Welcome to our session today. Tokyo 2021, India's new Olympic and Paralympic dawn. Can Tokyo 2020 be the game changer for Indian Olympic sport? Can the country shake the disappointment of Rio 2016 and become a multi-sport nation? How are the Indian athletes shaping up for the Olympics? With these and so many questions to answer, in their new book, Dreams of a Billion, India and the Olympic Games, Borya Majumdar and Nalin Mehta attempt to document India's Olympic story and provide some answers. Let's meet our panel today. Deepthi Bopaiah is an executive director at Go Sports Foundation, a not-for-profit organization founded in 2008, which supports junior, emerging and elite athletes in Olympic and Paralympic disciplines. A sportswoman herself, she is working towards building a sustainable, athlete-centric sporting ecosystem which nurtures future sportspersons. And gosh, do we need that or what? Nalin Mehta is an award-winning social scientist, journalist and author. He is Associate Professor with Shiv Nadar University, Consulting Editor with the Times of India, and Editor of the South Asian History and Culture book series and journal. Pullela Gopichand is, need I say it, one of the best badminton players in the world. He is the recipient of India's highest sports and coaching honours. He runs a world-class badminton training centre and is currently the Chief National Coach for the Indian badminton team. Our chair for today is Borya Mojandar. He is one of India's leading sports scholars and commentators and is the author of many, many books on Indian sport and its history, and is my senior from college. Over to Borya Mojandar.
Ratna actually said what I was about to say, that Ratna these days, she does so much, but I remember Ratna as my junior from college, and the many, many times we were in the presidency canteen just doing nothing but creating nonsense. So that's the presidency culture of Adda. That's what we used to do. But welcome to all of you and to everybody who's tuned in to listen to us. We've got some very, very important people to talk about India's Olympic and Paralympic future. Deepthi, who I have tremendous respect for the kind of work that she has done over the last several years and decades. Nalin, not to make her feel old, she's not. Nalin, he's a rock star. In every sense, if Nalin and I are together, there'll be some problem. Okay, and Nalin will be responsible for the problem. So that's my best way to explain who Nalin is. And Pullela Gopichand yesterday, by the way, we'll all sing happy birthday for Gopi towards the end of the session because it was his birthday yesterday. So today when I told him, Gopi, we'll celebrate your birthday, he said, you're 24 hours late. I said, COVID permits even banks and taxes 24-hour grace time. So we've got that. So we'll celebrate Gopi's birthday as part of our session. But more importantly, he's an inspiration. He's a living embodiment of what India should be. Someone who I consider family, brother, and as I said, someone who I actually feel is a true hero of this country. So coming to the subject, first things first, Thomas Bach, the IOC president, is in Tokyo as we speak and has more or less given it to the world that Tokyo 2020, a la 21, will happen. Okay, that's point number one. So anyone who thinks Tokyo, what is the future, etc., Tokyo more or less will happen unless our world becomes again, a mad world, which I don't think will, from the news that we are getting from Pfizer or BioNTech or Moderna or other vaccines in the world. We will have Tokyo 2020 or 21, maybe with fans. That's what the news is from Japan and from the IOC. So from that standpoint, Gopi, the deferral of the Olympic Games by a year, has that helped? Given what we are reading about the state of badminton, the confusion over Sindhu, I don't want to get into specifics here. How hopeful are you 7 months, 8 months ahead of the games, given that you have tremendous pressure on you? Rio 16 was huge because of Sindhu and yourself. Now we are on the cusp of a badminton breakthrough, many people in the top 20. Give me a realistic picture. Where are we with badminton 7 months ahead of Tokyo?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I think For me, the lockdown, the deferral of the Olympics from 20 to 21, from a badminton perspective, is a good thing to happen, is what I would think, because some of our players were going through a few injuries, and the extra time has given them time to recover. Having said that, I think the extra time given is always going to push the standards of fitness higher. That's what it's done across the board to a lot of players. So players either get depressed and go down in performance, or some of them actually have time to work on and get stronger. I do believe that we still have time, and the deferral, if anything, has not dented our chances in any which way. If probably anything, it has enhanced our chances in a better way for 2021.
Okay, I'll obviously come back to you, but Deepthi, if I can ask you to focus specifically on parasport, because Go Sports is in that unique position of supporting parasports in a manner that this country doesn't really see. Am I right in saying that what we've seen in Rio, compared to the able-bodied, we are definitely going to see a revolution as far as parasports is concerned in Tokyo? So from 4 medals, am I realistic in saying it will be double digits? Will that be true?
Thank you and good evening, everyone. Yes, I think, Borya, I think the challenges have been very, very different for able-bodied sport and for parasport. I think with parasport, in 2016, we had 11 people who actually qualified, and we had 4 of them win medals from there. And then in this year, we already had close to 25 to 30 people who got their quota for Paralympics. And we're talking about being the top 10 in the world. So a very, very high chance of a medal prospect. So yes, the parasport world, I think, was completely geared up and ready to really go and shine there. But I think able-bodied and parasport in both aspects, it's taken a mental toll more than anything else for athletes and for the support team, because obviously with the whole periodization planning, there's a lot of things that you have to get together, and the delay really takes it to the next level.
Okay, okay. I'll ask a follow-up question, but let me get Nalin in. Nalin, if you, for the sake of our viewers, just tell us a couple of stories. You know, we keep talking about India being jugaad, India being unique. Why do we celebrate a Gopichand? Why do we celebrate a Deepthi Bopaiah and her organization? Is because of some of the stories that you and I have been able to document in the book. So why don't you tell us a Devendra Jhajaria story or whatever you want to, locating or situating things in context as to what our athletes do, so people will know what it entails for an athlete to come out of India and win a medal.
You know, Devendra Jhajaria, you mentioned, Borya. Devendra Jhajaria, we celebrate for having won 2 gold medals at the Paralympics. But Devendra Jhajaria, very few people realize, when he first went to the Olympic Games, he paid for his own airplane ticket when he went. There wasn't enough funding for him to go. He had to pay for his own airline ticket to go to Rome, to go for the Olympics. When you look at people like you mentioned Paralympics, and Deepthi was talking about it as well. When you look at people like Deepa Malik and Devendra Jhajaria, the amount of effort they've had to make to take India into being a serious contender in Paralympic Games, that has been entirely their own effort. The Paralympic Federation, for example, has been mired in politics and lack of funding for a very, very long while. It was de-recognized in 2019 as well. A lot of these people have come in entirely for their own effort. Look at Deepa Malik. Deepa Malik, around the time of the Kargil War, her husband was fighting in the Kargil War. She was called in by the doctors and told, "You've got 1 week to walk," and that's it. She had to go through an operation. She initially trained. When she lost the use of her limbs, she initially trained in not for the shot put, but for something else. It's only when she realized that this will get her a medal that she changed the sport. The amount of self-effort, the amount of funding that they've done, and the sheer human grit that they've brought in is something that is of an entirely different level. So I think those are stories that have been underappreciated so far.
Okay, okay. When we are talking parasport, let me also make this point that there was supposed to be a 5th panelist, and we were supposed to also have the champion in Mansi Joshi join us. And Mansi, who trains with Gopi in his academy, she was part of this panel. Unfortunately, Mansi's family all are down with COVID. Her mom and she had to be actually, one of them had to be hospitalized. But the good news is all of them are recovering. So that's why we are missing Mansi Joshi. I'm sure she's watching because I had a chat with her yesterday on the phone. And she said, I'll watch and I'll miss the session, but this is for you, Mansi. Gopi, coming to you, the real story of Sindhu and Gopi is part of Indian folklore. What you did to her, what you made her go through, and then eventual triumph. It is the real story of a coach taking himself to that legendary status with an athlete who becomes a legend. Give me a real picture. So, Sindhu is now a world star, but doubles, Sindhu, what's happening with them? I mean, how hopeful are you? Don't tell me, okay, it has not dented our chances. What is Pullela Gopichand's blueprint to give us a medal, if I can say that? I know I'm sounding stupid here. There cannot be a blueprint for an Olympic medal. But if there is anyone who can give me that, it's you. So, what are your plans? Because I'm sure you have that book in place. So, give me the sense of that.
Well, I think whether it's any of the tournaments which were of importance in the last, say, 10 to 12 years, I think tournaments need preparations according to the circumstances and the opposition which is there. So whether it was Saina in 2012 or Sindhu, or whether it was Commonwealth Games, Asian Games 14, 18, all of them need special preparations. And if I were to talk about the Rio part, so in Jan end we went for this tournament in Australia. I went along, got things noted down, figured out what needs to be done, had a plan in place for the next entire 5 months, and just came back and followed it meticulously, and we ended up with a medal. Similarly, in 2012, with Saina, it was almost October of 2011 where we started our preparations, and it was very meticulous. And in both of these times, I didn't leave them for even a day in 2012, and only one day I left, and in 2016 I didn't leave for a day. So every single moment I was there, present, part of the preparations. So we prepared a plan for her game, we prepared a plan to counter opposition, we prepared a plan for the court conditions which were there. So I think that's important for us to succeed. So it's going to be the same. Of course, she is at another level today. Her opposition is also different. Her mindset is also different. So her challenges are different. So we'll have to take stock of things, where she is, what she needs to do to win a medal, and go from there.
Gopi, I'll have to ask you a critical question. You said Saina in 2012, you know where I'm going. I know, you know me. Saina in 2012, Sindhu in 2016. The word that basically was looming there at the background was you had control. And not in a bad way. You had control over preparation, you had control over training, you had control over everything. Do you actually have control now? Because from what I understand, and I'm not blaming you or Sindhu's father or anybody here. Nobody is to blame. All I'm saying is India is losing out. In what is happening around us, do you as head coach of the Indian national team, do you have control in telling me that, oh, you know what, Borya, between Sindhu and me, we are the same team and we will put in the same 500% in the next few months leading to Tokyo 20, giving ourselves the best chance. Does Pullela Gopichand feel in control or in confidence of the situation that he finds himself in sitting today?
I think right from 2006 onwards till date, or 2004 when I started coaching, I wish I was in control. Ideal scenarios don't happen, and I don't expect them to happen in the next few months. But I think we've figured a way out, and before every big tournament, it's taken an emotional toll on me. On the way we operate, we've probably lost out on a few things. But I think the lack of a system hurts Indian sport. Only now there is a certain maturity among the administrators, especially among SAI and the formation of the top and the government, where they're looking at deeper into high performance. And that is something which probably will change things in the future, and which has definitely showed good promise in the last few years. So I'm hoping that we will get to a place where people are accountable for their roles, and we will form our system, because as of now, if you look at it, whether it's government or association or parents or managers or coaches or academies or associations or employers or NGOs, we don't know who is in control, and that hurts Indian sport, because if you have somebody in that system powerful, they pull it to that side. And if the athlete is powerful, then all of them, then the athlete starts to dominate the entire stuff. So we've had struggles with top athletes' performances, because what they want and what they need are different things. And we need to address what they need. And we cannot, by desire of the athlete, go for what he wants.
Fantastic. No, Nalin, coming to you.
Yeah.
You know, Sunil Chhetri actually made this point to me the other day on my show. He said, and I was talking to him about fitness and culture of fitness. He said, you know, Borya, I don't, what Gopi just said in a different light, he said, I don't eat what I want, I eat what I need. Because that's how you aspire to this level of fitness. Yes, the point that you were trying to make.
The point I wanted to ask Gopi, Borya, you know, we have written in the book, and Gopi told us, for example, in our interviews with him, in your interviews with him, that that before Rio, the kind of work that he did with Sindhu and with Saina, with Sindhu, he took away her phone. She couldn't eat her favorite biryani. Her food was very monitored. She didn't have access to WhatsApp or phone for 6 to 7 months of time. That was a very different Sindhu. I think I want to ask a follow-up question to the kind of question you asked. That yes, our system has evolved, but when a Gopichand deals with a Sindhu today, Sindhu is also at a different place today than as a person, as a player, where she was 4 years ago. So for him, what has been the big difference in coaching Team India now? I mean, that's something I wanted to ask him a bit more compared to 4 years ago.
Gopi?
Well, we've had more resources come in, definitely. We've had more coaches come in. We've got a support team. We've got people keep pitching in. But luckily, the equation with me and Sindhu remains pretty much the same. And so I think the tournaments of, say, Asian Games, Commonwealth Games 2018 were also testimony to the kind of thing. Because at the end of the day, for the Olympics, for an event like this, for the country, I've done it in the past, that you will put all things to the side and just focus on what you want. And that's what athletes do as well, because deep down in their hearts, they'll do anything for that medal. And what they do for the last few years doesn't matter. I think they will prepare and they know where the medal lies for them.
Deepthi, coming to you, does the situation now, I mean, when you all started, or take Rio, go sports during Rio, go sports now. Are you hopeful more? Are you more sort of keen that, okay, 21, whatever pandemic, yes, pandemic, but we are still in a position to make a difference? It will be a new dawn. Does sort of that, because whenever you and I have spoken, you've given me, yes, the challenges, but at the same time, you've given me a picture where things are happening. Are you still confident? Are you still hopeful?
Yeah, I think I'd like to just follow from where Gopi mentioned, right? The system has grown and matured to quite a large extent, and stakeholders are talking to each other, meeting the athletes at the center of the needs, and then trying to understand what is required and how do you take them to the next level. So I think the fact that there are conversations happening today between the top, with the government, with SAI, with the respective sports federation, I think it's a much better place for the athlete, I would say, more than anything else, and the coach, because they're not having to decide who to work with. So I think that has definitely eased off. 2016 for us was special because of obviously Paralympics, with Deepa, Devendra and Vanubhati's medals, and we were part of the journey. But also Deepa Karmakar, without winning that medal, finishing fourth, on a world stage. And we are very, very excited about the ultimate sport. So we're actually working currently with a fencer who might end up becoming the first fencer to qualify from India, Bhavani Devi. There's rowing, there's taekwondo, and what's interesting is the diversity of sports with which our athletes are participating in and doing well at a large world stage. I think that has definitely changed in the last 4 year cycle, and it's really heartening to see when the key stakeholders come together, how that ripple effect can happen much faster than an 8 year cycle. Even with doubles, Gopi, with Chirag and Satvik, 6 years back also, we didn't probably expect that they'll be, going to a Olympics in a 6 year cycle. But the fact that everything came together, Gopi believed in doubles, changed the pairs, made it happen, you might actually see them qualifying and going into the Olympics. So I think there have been pockets of, fantastic performances, and the key is going to be to sustain it and work through this period. Obviously, from a periodization perspective, you're working to peak at a particular time. So this delay actually, while it gives you time to reset things, it also takes a toll on a lot of other aspects, and funding being one of the most important things. So I think that has really changed in both the Olympic cycles.
Nalin, when Deepthi says that you need to reset, that's more or less true for all nations except maybe China, because China from March onwards they got it right. I mean, the number of COVID cases came down to zero. Whether they hit it or we don't know. But the fact of the matter is, there's nothing there to say that it's not nearly normal. It is almost normal. From my friends who are there, they can train. Their athletes can train. Unlike our lockdowns, there's been nothing there. I mean, if you see the US, if you see Western Europe, if you see the rest of the world, they're all struggling like India has. Now, both you and I know Kiran Rijiju, and he keeps talking about India being in the top 10 by 28. Do you actually believe that is doable? When you see a Deepthi Bopaiah, when you see a Pullela Gopichand, these are individuals. I mean, Pullela Gopichand for me is this oasis in this desert, who has done it on his own, mortgaging his own house, doing crazy things. If somebody came and asked me, will you mortgage your house when you've had a children and your mother suffering from cancer, I would say, are you bloody nuts or what? No. So Pullela Gopichand is unique. So let's keep him aside. Deepthi Bopaiah leaving a banking job and joining Go Sports and making a fool of herself, people thought, and then making a success, I wouldn't take that risk. So these two are different. But when I talk of a system, when you see a Kiran Rijiju, does it give you hope that the government is actually interested in the Olympic Games? Does it give you hope that yes, we can have a structure?
Borya, I think we've had some efforts at creating or moving towards the structure in the last 4 or 5 years, which has been more than before. I think that would be fair to say. Gopichand mentioned the top scheme that's come into play in the last 3 or 4 years. That wasn't there before, and that's for elite athletes. We can talk about the nature of the top scheme, because currently the way it works, it only is for the elite athletes. You have to be at that level to get that money. Gopichand himself, for example, has critiqued the fact that you need to build a much wider pool, which needs funding, 4 or 5 athletes in each sport, and build a wider base. In terms of funding and the system, Borya, you are right. So far, our system in the key sports that we've done well have been based on the superhuman efforts of key people and their extraordinary efforts of the kind of like Gopichand and others that you've mentioned. We've systemically we've had a top scheme now. We get more funding today per Indian. It's about 3x more than what it was about 5 years ago. Now we're spending about 16 rupees per Indian compared to 11 rupees per Indian or per year 4 or 5 years back. But these figures don't mean much. What we need is a system. On the point that you mentioned about Rijiju. Rijiju has been trying as a sports minister to inculcate that system, but I think we are just at the beginning of that, which is why Tokyo is very important. If in Tokyo you suddenly win a much wider number of medals compared to Rio, because Rio was a real big come down. London was the first big turning point for Indian sport. Rio was a letdown. If we outperform on London, I think you and I have spoken about the kind of medals that we can win in London. that may well bring the next wave of change, the next wave of cementing we've just seen the beginning of changes right now in our sporting system for the last 4 or 5 years. We need a big win to be able to build a momentum, to be able to build something which is sustainable beyond the efforts of individuals.
Got it. Gopi, if I can take it from there, I mean, I think Nalin makes some important points. By the way, if anybody is listening to this broadcast, whoever's watching the live stream, how many of you have heard of Murlikant Petkar? If you have heard of Murlikant Petkar, then you actually believe in the Olympic dream. And if you haven't, then Google. Drop out of the session, go Google and come back. Because by then you would have realized why I asked you this question. Because this question is key to us knowing, are we serious about our Olympic Games? I'm not going to give you the answer now. Google it. Go to the internet and find out who Murlikant Petkar is for yourself. Because as I said, if you know who he is, then you know why I'm asking this question. Gopi, if I can come to you, you have emphasized to me about process. You have told me, look, Borya, what has changed is over the years, if we had 100 competitors in an event, now we have 2,000 taken. Yeah. So we have seen a revolution. But for people like Nalin and me, who are mortals, who are sports fans, not Deepthi. Deepthi believes in the system, funding 125 athletes, getting them ready for the next 8 years. But for the common man, how many medals has India won in Tokyo? अरे हम लोग 8 मेडल जीत गए, अरे कुछ तो हो गया यार ओलंपिक्स में. अगर हम लोग 2 मेडल दोबारा जीते, अरे बॉस 1.3 बिलियन पीपल 2 मेडल्स, ऑल नॉनसेंस. क्रिकेट देखते हैं चलो. That will happen again. From that perspective, and this has been the problem for Indian sport. We've always tried this quick fix. Are we in a position to synergize between a quick fix and getting maybe from 2 to 6 or 2 to 8 and then building a structure? Or are we going to emphasize on the process and say, oh, you know what, don't think too much about Tokyo, think about Paris, because 4 years down the line we'll be better off. Are you in a dilemma like this? Have you ever faced that? And for the common man who wants to believe in the Olympic dream, medals are important. What is you to say to them?
I think we need to put things in perspective, realistically know where we are, because sometimes you just think emotions will get you a medal. They don't. It's your performances on a daily basis, you have to ensure that you're of a high quality. And if you're consistent, if you're there among the top 4, then you have a chance for a realistic medal. But if you're 10th or 12th and then you're expecting a medal by chance, I think many don't happen that way. So for me, I think it's very, very important that we just take a step back and realize what our strengths are, what our weaknesses are, and take time to build on. And the biggest challenge with our ecosystem at the moment is that we have federations, government, people who are in for short term, and sports needs long-term vision. And we need a 10-year plan, not 10 one-year plans. We need to have long-term plans, and that would mean that we need to kind of redo the entire system. Even today, our dependency on foreign support staff and the knowledge which we have gained out of even, say, the medals which we have won in 2012 are not there with us many of the times. And that needs to change. We need to invest in our coaches. We need to invest in ensuring that Deepthi spoken about periodization, and she would know what a big challenge it is, because not many federations have a plan. We don't even know when the tournaments are going to happen. So we need to start there. We need to ensure that the coaches are in place, and we need to ensure that who is responsible for what. And it is all started, but I think a change in personnel at government, at federation cannot change the course of action for the future. So I think continuity is the key, and everybody in the system has to believe that this is the selection process, this is the way we're going to do this, and for the next few years we'll stick on to this process no matter who changes in the system. Unless that consistency is there, we're going to find it difficult, because as of now, every time a new officer comes in, a new minister comes in, a new government comes in, a new federation chief comes in, the policies change, and it doesn't help.
Fantastic. So basically, Deepthi, what he's saying is, when we have, excuse me, when we have these periodic revamps of the ministerial portfolios, he's telling me that let a Kiran Rijiju stay on. Not per se Kiran Rijiju, but whoever the sports minister is. Let his vision come to fruition. Talking of Bengal, I really don't think the sports ministry can be a political dole-out. It has to go to people who understand sport, know sport, and want to make a difference as far as sport is concerned. Again, coming back to that, you have dealt with government very recently. I remember you telling me you've dealt with SAI, you've dealt with government, you've dealt with Narendra Batra at IOA. Is it different now? Have you found them different? More corporates? Take a JSW, Park Jindal, Young Man, Bellary, that IIS Academy, your own institution, Olympic Gold Quest. There are quite a few now who are doing tremendous work. Have things really changed for the better in the last couple of years?
Yes, I think it has changed because corporate India has started supporting sport. They see the value of sport, they see what can happen, and they understand long-term plans. And like Gopi rightly said, we're not coming for a quick fix, but that's really important in how you explain to them that this is a long-term game. We're not going to be able to get medals in 1 year. And we're not in this for medals. We're in it to put the system in place so that we churn out youngsters to get to the best of their potential. And I think India must also understand that if you look at the Olympic Games, we don't even participate in all the events that are there. So qualification becomes the first level. Then will medals come. So it is important that we participate in a diversity of sports before you start looking at medals. And just being an Olympian, maybe today is not so great, but as a country, we are so much into awarding athletes, right? When we win a medal, the entire country and states come together and they're ready to give money to that particular individual. But the same reward will not be given on winning a national tournament or winning a smaller tournament. So I think this award-reward culture is something that if it changes, I'm sure, and Gopi has always said that we'll see so much more talent coming in and sticking on to sport. Because the biggest concern we have as a nation is a dropout. We have such high dropout at a national level because parents are also worried. What are they going to do if they don't continue sport? Or if they get injured? What's going to happen? So I think it has definitely changed. I think Mr. Kiran Rijiju himself has put in so many different plans and systems in place so that young athletes are taken care of. They're given stipend, which has never happened before in the past, where they can spend their money on a monthly basis. But I think the monitoring and management of it towards goal-based performance metrics is something that has to be done in a much more systematic manner. But definitely things have changed. At least the language is something that we like to hear. It's positive. But I think it also comes down to will they be there up to 4 years. I've been in sport now 9 years and I've seen this is the third sports minister that we're dealing with. So, and Gopi must have seen so many more over the years. But it's just that, you're starting all over again and taking that vision forward. So,
why do I feel that I know I've seen you in sport for 19, not 9, something's wrong. So that's a different matter.
I second that. I want to make a point on the systems. That Gopi and Deepthi have both made very important points. And I want to illustrate this by giving a couple of examples on why systems and long-term thinking is so important. Just compare gymnastics and shooting. Shooting was a big disappointment in Rio. What has happened since then? Because you put in place a serious post-mortem, the Shooting Federation put in place a system where under Abhinav they did a fact-finding committee. Unusual for Indian sport. They published that report and they made serious systemic changes. As a result, today so many Indian shooters are in the fray in Tokyo. Many of them with serious medal chances. That's led to a complete resurgence in Indian shooting, including at the junior most levels, including at the level of kids. Compared to gymnastics, Deepa Karmakar was fascinated India, and she was like a bolt from the blue for everybody. What's happened to gymnastics? For gymnastics, there were two federations fighting, both were vying for it. There was such confusion about the qualification rounds. It was a complete mess. So that's why systems are important. It's not just to make it look good on a corporate spreadsheet and so on. Now I think, and Gopi is here. Gopi was part of the Olympic task force. Most of the solutions lie in implementing, or at least a lot of the solutions lie in implementing the findings or the recommendations of the PM's Olympic task force. Some of them include appointing a high performance director and again having a long-term plan. I think Gopi is very right, having a 10-year plan. We haven't implemented that at a national level. Until you implement those kind of things, you will always remain hostage to bureaucrats or ministers, and having a good minister versus an average minister or a more political minister.
Okay, I will just want to give you guys a sense. I mean, anyone who's listening, we are talking about an Olympic medal. Now, just for your understanding, what the difference is between an Olympic medal and a loss. And I have to go back to Abhinav here. I mean, Gopi and Deepthi know, so does Nalin, what I am going to say. But you actually got to understand this. I mean, Pullela Gopichand has lost. You see him there, right? Yesterday was his birthday. He says he's had a lot of cake. Now, if after having so much cake he looks like this, then I shouldn't exist because, my diet, you guys will laugh at me. So it's like that, right? I mean, and I think I've done tremendous amount of yoga during COVID and I've become fit. Gopi is in a different league, but also on the one hand Saina, on the other hand Sindhu, Gopi, and the pressure of dealing with these ladies, he loses weight every day. So all of that keep aside. Now to the Abhinav story. Abhinav, and Nalin knows this. So we asked him, how much did you lose by? So he said to us in jest, and there was Kali Puri, the managing director of the India Today group, with me at that point, and Abhinav asked Kali to take out one strand of hair. Yes, who's listening to us? One strand of hair, and we were at a distance of some 15-20 meters. And Kali was a little taken aback. So he said, can you take out one strand of hair? And she did. And Abhinav then told us from 15 meters, can you see the tip of the hair? And we're like, what? He says, yes, I lost by half of that. And it made us realize what it takes to win an Olympic medal. What it takes to be a Pullela Gopichand, to give us a Saina Nehwal bronze in 2012, a PV Sindhu silver in 2016. For 8 months, this chap did not do anything in his house. He was living the life of an athlete, trying to get her ready for Rio. So folks, celebrate them. Indian athletics, a Deepthi Bopaiah leaving a prosperous job and doing Go Sports, isn't rewarding personally. These are idealistic people fighting for an idealistic vision, and that is India. India excelling at Olympic level. They are tremendous people. So when you talk about 2 medals, अरे क्यों हुआ यार 2 medal? हम क्या गधे लोग हैं? 1.3 billion people. Sorry, please understand, there was no culture in this country. From there to where we are, to being an Olympian, करके देखो ना यार. एक बार गोपी बन के देखो. रोज 4 बजे उठ जाओ. 4 बजे उठ जाओ, बीवी से बोलो फिल्म नहीं जाएंगे, आइसक्रीम नहीं खाएंगे, बिरयानी नहीं खाएंगे, 6 महीना नहीं खाएंगे. करके दिखाओ. फिर दम देखेंगे ना किसी का. That is what it takes to be a Pullela Gopichand. So for heaven's sake, let's not be negative, let's not be sarcastic, and let's not be, sort of just pass a flippant comment about Indian sport. Because people who are inside have given their lives to make this change happen. I don't want to go into a rant now. Gopi, Sindhu, Satvik, Chirag, realistic possibility in Tokyo?
Yes, definitely. I think Sindhu, of course, is the name which we would, but definitely I think Satvik, Chirag have a definite chance in Rio. They're young, they're strong, they're getting better, and I do believe that they have a chance. Just to add, Borya, about the previous culture thing, I think for the first time in our history of India, we have the Prime Minister of the country talking about sport continuously. It's almost since 2016, I think April 2016 onwards, For 7 Ki Baats, he had actually continuously spoken sport. He's actually, whether it's Fit India, whether it's Kelo India, whether it's Yoga Day, I think they have actually taken initiatives and put sport up there. So with that coming from the big boss himself, I think people take it seriously. And all of this, whether it's corporate India supporting or whether it's the Indian ministers or bureaucracy starting to look at and say, wow, the Prime Minister is talking about sport and this is serious. I think that makes a huge difference, and that difference is visible in the urgency in which each one at the government and the corporate level are working. So I think there's a lot we can talk about because it's such a big field where performances, I think we are not asking whether we are the best software manufacturing, so hardware manufacturing company or software company or the doctors or scientists. But in sport, I think the number one is what we look for. I think we need to change a lot of it. And I think to have a talk from the Prime Minister himself on this has definitely made an impact. And whether it's Fit India, Kelo India, University Games or Yoga Day, all of these actually chip into that ecosystem. And we are very positive. It's almost like we are in Hyderabad, Bangalore or any of our cities where we are not ready for the growth, and the growth has happened. So unless you streamline it, you can't figure it out. So that's how we are in this stage. We have too many people, we have too many players, aspirations are too many, there are too many participants in. We need to streamline that system because that influx is what we need to kind of figure out quickly and get to.
Okay, it's 19:13, so 1.5 more minutes and I'm going to ask, open it up for question and answers and get Ratna in. So my final point based on what you just said, I was having a chat with Sunil Chhetri, the football legend, and Sunil is now getting into ISL mode, captaining Bengaluru FC. And Sunil was telling me, Sunil said, people compare Indian football with a Ronaldo or a Messi and like Arekyu, etc. Now he said, look, Borya, I am not born in Europe. I don't have Ronaldo's height. I don't have maybe his skill. But what I can have is I can work as hard as Ronaldo. I can work harder. I can be as fit as Ronaldo. I can be fitter. Why do I not aspire to doing what I can do? If you control the controllables in Indian sport, trust me, you can get a Sunil Chhetri, you can get a Pullela Gopichand, you can get a Virat Kohli, you can get a Mary Kom. That's what we should do. I don't know how many medals we will win in Tokyo. Maybe we will win 6 or 7 because my estimate, Nalin and I had done was 8. I still think we can target that, and for parasports, I think we will touch double digits, which will be a revolution in itself. On that note, it's 19:14, so Ratna, over to you. Ratna, if you can hear me, time for questions.
Yes, I can. I'm just waiting for the slide to go over. Yes, it is time for the Q&A. A few questions have come in. The first one is from Debashish Chakraborty, who asks, there seems to be a catch-22 in our sports system. Unless we win a medal, we don't get facilities. And unless we get facilities, we won't win medals. How do we break through this impasse as a country?
Actually, Gopi and Deepthi both take it. Gopi, you go first and then Deepthi can take it.
Well, I think it's a tough question because back when if you look at Indian sport, Indian badminton, 92, 93, when I was growing up, the legacy, the belief which Prakash sir had left had almost dried up. And we were just going out thinking that the joke at that time was that either it's morning show or matinee. We would be out before this evening of the first day. Then the challenge was that we would get 2 tournaments in a year, one paid by government and one partly paid by government, where they only paid for the airfare. So it was very difficult because we needed exposure, we needed shuttles, we needed camps and coaches. But for that, we needed to be in the priority A list, which meant that we needed to win. So that cycle was difficult to crack. Luckily, 2001, when I won the All England, I think things got a bit better off, and people started to see that, okay, there is a certain possibility with badminton. And the moment Saina had this 2008 quarterfinal result, then there was some more belief, and 2010 Commonwealth actually changed. I think a lot of credit has to go for the Commonwealth 2010 for changing a lot of things, because the amount of money which came in during that period actually benefited a lot of sports. I think for us to understand as a nation, I think for us to be the best of what we can, and this is where I think Khelo India and Fit India come in, physical literacy for everybody comes in. I think if medals were our only reason to run, then I think we shouldn't be running marathons and we shouldn't be running 100 meters, because I don't see that history of people outside of a certain race or a certain region or a gene type winning those medals. So I think it's very important that we play sport for sport itself, for Khelo India, for Fit India. And I think the best of us should take that forward to the next level. And I think each sport is important. And I could sound foolish, but I think as a nation, we are big, and we don't have to depend on the world to dictate which sports there are. And I think whether the height of the basketball ring or whether the football goal post, I think are designed for a certain kind of people to win. And we wanting to excel in those sports and saying our pride depends on whether we win them or not is not an ideal scenario to be in. I think it's time to be bullish about us. I think Olympics are important for pride, but I think losing at the Olympics should not dent our pride. And I think we need to look at sport a lot more holistically. And I think if not now during the COVID scenario, when do we realize the importance of sport? I think if winning should not be the only reason for us playing sport. It has to be a lot more deeper.
Fantastic. Deepthi, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think Gopi has answered it beautifully, but I would just like to make one point in terms of role models. You know, as a nation, we have very few role models, and a lot of them is really Bollywood and cricket. But today, if you ask a young child who's your role model, they may take a PV Sindhu's name or a Deepa Karmakar's name or a Kidambi Shrikant's name. And I think that has changed. And they have seen that there is a power in being the best possible version of yourself in sport and playing professional sport. So I think as a nation, it's really amazing to see how we can excel in sport as well.
Okay. Ratna, next question.
Yes. Varun Singh asks, given the disparity in the world and our timings in athletics, should we concentrate on events like archery, gymnastics, wrestling, shooting, etc., and write off field sports for a while?
Nalin, Gopi answered that. Why don't you take that? Gopi partly answered that. You're on mute, Nalin.
Thank you, Borya.
Yeah.
I think Gopi is absolutely right. Look, if you look at look at the growth stories of countries that weren't anywhere in Olympics earlier and went up, they went up by picking up sports which have multiple medals. Look at what China did. China worked on if you have sports like athletics, you have sports like swimming, which have multiple medals, you can go up. Now again, Gopi talked about athletics not being an area necessarily that we should look at, because all kinds of other things come into play. We at the moment, to look at the areas where India has traditionally been strong in: shooting, boxing. Again, a whole range of medals which are available in these two sports. Right now for Tokyo, we have a very strong shooting contingent. Borya, you've been talking about how this time we've got such a large quota and everyone qualified, and we have serious medal contenders in shooting. In boxing again, we have a wider bench strength. So I think these are the kind of things India should focus on, the things that we have a depth in, the things we have a traditional strength in to begin with, and then you expand your ambit. Gopi is absolutely right that you can't go from being nobody in a certain sport to suddenly being an Olympic winner overnight. We have to do it slowly and steadily. And the best is to be strategic and to do it across sports that are multiple. For us, those sports are shooting and boxing.
Okay.
Borya,
Just to add,
I slightly differ on that point because I just feel like there is a scope to actually start investing in new sports. Like you said, there is a medal tally, medal options in multiple sports. So when we keep focusing on traditional sports, when you look at badminton, you need the same hand-eye coordination even with sports like fencing. And if we as a nation have done well in badminton, I see no reason why we can't do well in fencing, right? So I think we have to pick and choose the sports we really want to look at. But in some sense, that traditional model has, I personally feel, has blocked us for a very long time. Yes, shooting has seen its benefits and seen the juniors as young as 15 years old winning world championship medals, which is fantastic. But yeah, I think it needs to be a combination of both. What Gopi said and Nalin mentioned.
Okay, just one line from me. Britain won 1 gold medal in 1996 and lottery funding came in 97. Yeah. It's now increased to 30 in 15 years. So if you think this will take 100 years, it won't. As long as you have people like Gopi and Deepthi coming together and synergize, and if you have a good government machinery, Nalin and I will be there in the sidelines to keep eating their heads and doing sessions like this, we will have a revolution. Ratna, question number 3.
Yes. Tanvi asks, consistency seems to be an issue with a lot of Indian badminton players. Why is it so difficult for our players to stay on top of their game long term, whereas a Tai Tzu Ying or a Kento Momota are at number 1 for weeks on end?
Legend, take it.
Well, I think it's a tough. I think for us, as I said, I think to be in control of the system is very important. Especially in badminton, I think players want to play tournaments to keep their rankings up, and they're looking at it with multiple reasons, whether it's contracts, whether it's their own race against other players to grab another slot in the future of a big event. I think the key is to actually be in control of the fitness element so much that they are consistently doing what they need to do. And Deepthi mentioned it in one of the earlier statements where she said we are not in control of what they're awarded and how they go on from once they become a champion. So I think it just becomes very difficult because you've got a state government asking them, sponsor asking them, employer asking them, central government asking them. So it's like people are just hero stuck. So you're looking at managers who look at athletes like Bollywood stars, and culturally we are not in a great frame of managing performance. I think that needs to change. So we have groundwork which needs to be done. But having said that, a coach-led, athlete-centric model is what we need to look at, and a sports science supported. So if the athlete has to go for a tournament, there has to be a certain structure of fitness and mindset which he has to, and discipline which he has to adhere to, and only then he can go. And that somehow has been difficult to implement in the badminton world in India.
Ratna, last question if we have one more.
Yes, we do. Why did PV Sindhu give everyone a shock by talking of retirement? Neha Ross has asked this.
This is lovely. Come on, Gopi, take this one.
Can I pass it on to Borya, because he knows a lot of it. He is dug deeper into this, a lot more than I have.
No. I mean, okay, I will give you the journalist perspective. I have spoken to Gopi. I know Gopi's perspective. When I called Gopi at about 3:30 when that tweet first happened, and Gopi was like, really? So he had no idea. Okay, that's the truth. In front of him, I'm saying this. And then I spoke to Sindhu's family, and the perspective was, no, read the full tweet, etc., etc. I have my own perspective, but this is not my position to give that perspective. All I will say is if the Home Minister of the country and if the Sports Minister of the country tweets a thank you to an athlete, clearly they didn't understand the wit or whatever it was supposed to mean. So let's leave it at that. I know Gopi will have an issue answering this question because, by the way, let me tell you, it's a superb question. But if it was another time, I would have gone deeper into it and given you some politically incorrect answers, but this is not the forum for it, and it's 1926, trust me. So I'll leave it at that. Ratna, with your permission, can I give my panelists last 30 seconds each to comment and then close it? Deepthi, you go first. So are we seeing a dawn, at least in the Paralympic sphere, if not in the Olympic sphere in 21? 30 seconds.
I'm very positive about both Olympics and Paralympics, and I think as a system, we're moving forward, moving ahead, we're coming together and working closely. Definitely the Paralympic movement is definitely going to see that surge in terms of performance, because almost close to 25 or 30 players across different disciplines are in the top 10 in the world in their respective sports and disability categories. So yes, we are going to see a big revolution happen, and I really hope Tokyo 2021 happens.
It will happen. Fingers crossed. She mentioned the word surge. At the moment she said surge, I was like, very numbers. These days, surge is a different surge. But here we are talking about
medals. I'm talking your language now. Medals.
Correct. Nalin, you believe at least a part revolution in Tokyo?
Yes, I think so. I think you and I have spoken about this. We've talked about the number of medals that we think that India should definitely be winning. So in that sense, it should be a turning point. But more importantly, I think India is evolving its own model for sport. It is not like necessarily like the American model or like the Chinese model on the other side, or what was earlier the East European model. We are in the last 3 or 4 years, we've seen a major shift in sporting cultures, but that needs to be sustained, and that's why I think Tokyo is going to be very important. So yeah, we are definitely much better off where we were 3 or 4 years ago or 5 years ago today, and that's why Tokyo is a very important turning point.
Okay, Gopi, we are all in the outside supporting you, but you are the architect. You told me once you feel tired because you've been there, done that for several years. Can we say today, conclusively that Pullela Gopichand still has that 100% drive in him to make that difference, push himself, push his family, go mad again, do all crazy things, but Tokyo will be yours, or you will leave no stone unturned?
I think for me, whenever I've said it's enough, the country came first, and I had to put things by my side. So as early as 2012, I thought that was the last Olympics for me. And all of us in sport actually believe that we've really worked hard in our life. Not that the others don't, but we all believe that we get up every day morning and we go through a lot in life. So we need to retire early. But somehow that never comes, and somehow what is needed needs to be done, and whatever sacrifices need to be done are done with a lot of responsibility, but also with a lot of pleasure and pride. Having said that, for me, I think for the sake of our country, for the sake of our parents who are investing in their kids playing sport for the first time, for corporates who are looking at sport differently than they've ever looked before in the past, for our Prime Minister and the ministers and the bureaucrats who are actually working hard to put things in place, for our NGOs who are actually taken time off their careers to actually be here and do this voluntarily. I think we need to succeed. I think it's going to be important that this jump needs to happen, and for the positivity which the results can bring, I think we need to succeed in Rio, in Tokyo, and I hope that we come back stronger from 2021.
Okay, it's 19:29, so 30 more seconds from me, and I'll give it to Ratna to close it. You know what? When COVID happened, all of us thought the virus will come inside and kill us. We thought we've lost our lives. We had lockdown, we had negativity, we had gloom. Each of us had depression. Then sport came back. We had cricket. We now know over the last 1.5 months the COVID numbers are down. How many of you have thought that you were all watching IPL sitting at home and you didn't go out during Durga Puja or festivities and you actually contributed to bringing the numbers down? Sport can impact your lives in tangible and intangible ways. The fact is, India doesn't have a system. Agreed. The fact is, India doesn't have a structure. Agreed. The fact is, India doesn't have resources like in America. Agreed. India does have a Pullela Gopichand. India does have an Abhinav Bindra. India does have a Go Sports Foundation. India does have a literary festival that will do a session prime time. India does believe in sport. We all believe in sport, and Tokyo should be a new dawn. Thank you, Ratna. Back to you.
What a fantastic way to wrap up the session. Thank you to all the panelists and our chair, of course, who joined us today. And you can buy the books that we talked about from our bookstore partner, tataclick.com. Thanks to our title sponsor, Tata, and co-sponsors, Tata Steel and Tata Projects. Our next session here in 15 minutes is Emergency Room, How to Rescue India's Economy, with Jayati Ghosh, Raghuram Rajan, chaired by Govindraj Ethiraj. Thank you for being here online with us. See you soon at the next session.